Hi, this is Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter, and you're listening to Job Search Radio. There's a lot that I know about finding work that you as a job hunter, because you're not really involved with that except maybe every couple of months or every couple of years, you just don't know. And I realized it'd be a great topic for a show. So I invited an old friend of mine from New York named Steve Levy to come in and talk with me about that. And he and I are like two bull elephants. As a matter of fact, that's what he calls us at the beginning of the show. So hang in there, go along for the ride with us as we bounce ideas off of one another for the next half hour.
Are you looking for a new job or interested in leveling up? Job Search Radio is your go-to resource for insider tips on job hunting and growing your career. Here's your host, Jeff Altman.
Hey, Steve, welcome to Job Search Radio. Great to have you on board.
Well, thank you, Jeff. It's like two bull elephant New Yorkers going at each other about recruiting and job search. This should be fun.
I agree. Introduce yourself to my audience. Give them an idea of who you are and what your background is.
Talk about career change. Everyone likes to talk about career changes. I'm an engineer who crossed over to the dark side into HR and recruiting. Long, laborious process. It wasn't easy. There were lots of roadblocks. But I run recruiting at companies. Presently, I am in negotiations to move into a new role, which should be of interest to the community. I do quite a bit pro bono work for job seekers, primarily because there was no one there for me. My career services failed. Career advisors have failed. And I had to learn literally by hook or by crook on what works for job search, what works for recruiting. And it's just my makeup. I like giving it back, and that's what we're going to talk about. Lessons learned from being a recruiter that can be applied to job seekers. Isn't that right, Jeff?
You betcha. So recruiting has been evolving for a while, but I tend to think of job hunting for most people has been stuck in an older paradigm. So my thought was for us to talk about some of the things that we as recruiters know that job hunters really don't.
That's a particularly good topic because it's almost like there are shows on TV where the masked magician shows how magic tricks are done. They're still magic, but knowing how they're done, gives you that aha moment. Now I get it. And you actually end up appreciating the magic even more. Same thing with job seekers, knowing what the recruiters do, how they think, what they act like. That's power.
You betcha. So tell us one of the things that recruiters know that job hunters may take for granted or overlook.
I'm not sure if they take for granted or overlook because, job seekers are pretty much acting the way they believe they should be acting. Little things like, cover letter. Here's a great one. Little things like these days many recruiters have their phone numbers on their LinkedIn profiles. And more often than not, sadly, in job posts, it'll say, no, please, no calls. The reality of it is if a recruiter has their phone number publicly posted somewhere, they're actually asking for people to call them. I mean, how you do it is another story, but I want to see people who can, not necessarily following directions is nice if you're, in line of the DMV. When it comes to job search, we're looking for unique people and people who can break the paradigm, who can, make a case for calling when it says don't call. Little things like that are things that we actually look for.
And at the same time, I'm going to interrupt you here. It drives me crazy when people call who in no way, shape, or form fit the requirement that I'm recruiting for. I don't mind if someone hears that I'm engaged in a search and they've been referred to me by someone and they pick up the phone and call, I have no problem with that whatsoever. But as I've said many times, the Purdue chicken plucker who wants to be the software engineer, and I've had that phone call, who argues with me that
you had the Purdue chicken plucker want to be a software developer?
I had a Purdue chicken plucker.
Well, that's
what have you had?
Yeah, you're still mulling over that Plux, doesn't it? Oh gosh, there's so many. It's mostly it's pretty much all the time, unless they're coming in through through referral or they've used something to get at me. I mean, I've had entry level folks asking me about heads of marketing positions. There are way too many to remember. I think that the key there is if anyone who actually can call me up or reach out to me, even by email, and cause my first reaction to go, wow, that's different. Not different in a schizophrenic, psychotic way, but different in that I know they did a hell of a lot more than just look at my company's website. We'll get into it a bit more, but there are many, many things that I wish more people did just to differentiate themselves. But, sadly, all they're doing is, much like the career advisors, career experts, if you will, who taught them these things, they're only good at using one tool, and that's the hammer. And that is the apply. I hate the word apply. For a job that they believe they're qualified for. I hate the word qualified. And they do it in such a standard way, dear sir or madam. Think about that, Jeff. Cover letters. Most of my
resumes like burgers at a fast food restaurant over the transom.
But here's a good one. Dear sir or madam. Unless you're applying for a job at the Happy Valley Ranch, the whorehouse in Las Vegas, there are no madams in recruiting or HR. But that is it's a vestige. That's an old hammer that people are using. Even worse, and I'll let you get a word in, is I've had people reach out to me, cover letters that say, Dear Bob. Jeff, what's my name?
Steven.
Exactly. But they're just using the same paradigm over and over again. I wish folks knew that I don't read cover letters.
Especially when they're an attachment in your email.
Well, it's more than just that. In 26 years of recruiting, I only remember one cover letter. One. And I'm going to read it to you only because I think your audience should see that it is just one in which it actually caused me to dial the phone before I finished reading it. So this is one in which I was, for the company where I was running recruiting, I was looking for a Linux systems administrator, and I got this cover letter, and this is what the cover letter said. It said, I've been bouncing boxes for Uncle Sam 2.5 years now in some of the most god-awful places on Earth. I've racked servers during indirect fire, maintained contact with a bird while our vehicle was shot up, mastered the finer art of the many uses of duct tape and how it applies to IT in a war zone. I've put up racks in the Namibian provinces while cheetahs and jackals watched me 100 yards away. I've even chased an ostrich who tried to steal my Cat 5 from the box. I've worked on military projects where the .mil PM leadership had a more difficult time making decisions than my wife. I've danced in the red zone with Iraqi locals after a support call to a forward operating base. This is the last paragraph. I've mastered the chemistry of the essential caffeine stack, and I've debunked the myth that if you untie your belly button, your butt will fall off. It won't. I've been shot at, shot up, blown up, broken, and put back together again from Baghdad to Namibia, from Sudan to Djibouti. I strongly feel that I have the skill set, experience, and thick skin to take on the world of IT in the greatest city on earth. What do you think about that, Jeff, since we're both recruiters?
I'm on the phone with them. You're absolutely right. Because that person did something that most don't. It was clearly personal.
It was so personal. When you the challenge here is to, for the secret to me, I might read it, I can tell literally from the first line that it's bad. And so, I look at the resume first. I'm not, unless I'm hiring you for a writing position, I'm not going to look at your cover letter. And even then, it's the fourth thing that I look at. I read.
You mentioned the resume. What else do you look at?
Well, I'll tell you what I do is I read the resume. By the way, everyone has seen these 6-second studies. I know the person who ran the study very well. I know how many subjects were involved in that study. I'm a fast reader. I can't read a resume in 6 seconds. So what I end up doing is I read the entire resume from the bottom up, just so you know. And the reason I do that is because if the bottom of the resume is boring, if I come up with a lot of so what responses, it's not going to get better. It allows me probably to take a different point of view on resumes and what people write. So I read the resume first. These days, I'm going to look for their social. I'm going to Google their name and look at for the social points of data, and then I'm going to look at their LinkedIn profile. I'm going to look for agreement between the profile and the resume. I'm looking for inconsistencies. And then at the very, very end, I might look at the cover letter. But the problem with the cover letter that people don't get is if there's stuff on the cover letter that's not in your resume, I start wondering what's real and what's not. People don't think about those things. People think that the cover letter is going to, cause a recruiter. Most recruiters, by the way, aren't trained psychotherapists. They can't read between the lines on resumes. They think they can, but they can't. They make these broad assumptions. They make broad assumptions. Look, I know I don't have ESP because I was divorced. So much for being able to read people. Really shitty recruiters will look at things and make leaps of faith. They read buzzwords. You have many career advisors will say, put all these buzzwords in there. Bullshit. Enough buzzwords. Find out. I need to take a step back here because it's important. Do you know why to the audience? Do you know why companies hire people?
Why do companies hire people, Steve?
They hire them to solve specific problems, not generic problems, specific problems. These are the kind of problems that keep the hiring manager awake at night. So maybe one of the things that most job seekers don't do that I wish they did, and occasionally one or two will do it, they will dig deep before they put their John or Jane Hancock and quote unquote apply. They will find out. They'll spend a half hour not on the company website. I don't read the company website. I know what's on the company website. This is not a memory test. This is not a reading comprehension test. I mean, I just those that clearly go out and find stuff from industry that differentiates their ability to understand the problems that we have. Those are the ones that jump out to me. And again, I want to see that in the resume. I don't care about the freaking cover letter. Your LinkedIn profile. I wish people understood that your LinkedIn profile is your resume on steroids. I don't understand the folks that just put the same things on your LinkedIn profile as you do on a resume. You have a lot more space. Put it all in there. Set up the problems for me. What did you do by yourself? What did you do with your team? What's your legacy? Your the companies that you left. What did you do there that's still, that's still in play? People just don't. All they do is, most recruiters, by the way, they post and pray, and it doesn't matter whether they're in-house recruiters or agencies. Jeff, you know this. Most recruiters just post and pray, and they do a happy dance when somebody who's halfway decent applies. Same thing with job seekers. Most of them just post it, that they pray and spray. They pray to God that the spraying of a resume will get some response from a crappy recruiter on the inside who they believe can read between the lines and see greatness. It doesn't happen that way, Jeff.
I well agree with you, and I'm going to pause you for a second here. and say, we're going to be back with more from Steve in just a moment, but first my insider tip for this show, which is about getting yourself organized. Because Steve is talking about some of the things that people do by mistake as part of the old paradigm and what they can do differently. I'm going to just talk with you about one thing that is old but no one does that they need to do, and that is track their own activity. See, for those of you who are job hunting, many of you think you're doing more than you really do. And I know this because I've spoken to and coached so many people who sit in front of a screen all day looking at job ads, hitting the apply button, and wondering why they don't get results. The statistics are 70% of positions are filled as a result of networking. 70% of those 70% are filled as a result of relationships developed during the search that you didn't have at the beginning. There's differing statistics about what percentage recruiters and online advertising has. I'll just throw them all into one category. 30% are filled that way. You need to track your activity to know what you're doing that's getting results, because after all, if you're flipping resumes out there and you're not getting interviews, your resume is a problem, and your search technique is a problem. If you're getting interview requests and you're not getting invited back for seconds, well, your interviewing isn't as good as you think it is. So there's a lot that you can be doing in order to organize yourself as part of this search, and I'm telling you, do some work there. Now, I've got a lot more information on my website, so come over to thebiggamehunter.us. I've got a book there called Get Your Job Search Organized Now that's available to you, as well as tons of other content that you can watch, listen to, or read. So again, thebiggamehunter.us. Let's continue on, Steve. So we were talking.
Yes, we were.
And I interrupted your head of steam. So you were talking about hitting apply and the foolishness that people have of how they conduct themselves. But I want to get us really focused in on the things that we know that they don't know. And we've been spending a lot of time criticizing them, and you've been great talking about how you evaluate people by starting off with the resume, the social perspective that comes from Twitter, Facebook, and any other site, Google+, then going to LinkedIn to see if there are inconsistencies, and then the foolishness that people have of those same boring cover letters that often have inconsistent information or fill in what isn't in the resume that should be in the resume. And that's, I believe, where we left off.
Yeah, I think the advice that's given is, I sort of need to take another step back. There is a group of recruiters, and Jeff, I know you know some of them, and that we're trying to, we finally recognize it, and we've been talking about this issue for 10 to 15 years. Recruiting in of itself isn't broken. It's the recruiters. I mean, the barrier to entry to recruiting, by the way, and I'm sure members of your audience know this, the barrier to entry is not very high. You know, we have a joke in the industry. If you have a pulse and you can make a phone call or send an email, you can become a recruiter. You won't become a very good recruiter, but you can become a recruiter. So when I refer to some of the things that quote unquote we do, it's the group of people, these are my friends who were trying to shape the industry. And these things would help any job seeker, because if these things are not being done for you, then I think you have some ammunition to make a very, very informed decision as to what you want to do next. I mean, first things first. What the really good recruiter does is knows that the job description isn't the real job. Case in point, software developer, you look at the job description, firstly about 50% of the job ad is how great the company is and how they only hire the best and the brightest. But then in the first slide it says pretty much you're going to develop software. Well, shoot. Well, we know that because that's what a software developer does. But what we do is I look at the entirety of a resume. Look, resumes, interviewing are not natural acts. I personally give people a couple of mulligans, do-overs, while I research them. I look for certain things in knowledge of the area that show me that there might be something there in that person, because I know what problems my hiring managers are asking their new hires to solve. I know them in very, very specific terms. So I'm going to look for things that are exactly like that. The person has actually solved these problems or has solved elements of them. And then I'm going to look online.
Here for a second, Steve. Let's say they're not working with a recruiter, because I do the same thing you do. I want to understand what the issue is that needs to be addressed, what the problem is, and what this person's really going to do in the first 90 days and first year once they're on board. But for the average job hunter who's hitting the apply button, which folks never apply for a job through an applicant tracking system. So,
I'm going to. Well, Jeff,
I want to finish my question, and I'll let you rebut the applicant tracking system thing. So, for the average individual who's doing their version of post and pray, or flipping resumes across the transom to companies, how do they find out the real story?
Okay, that's a good question. First, I want to let the audience know that the applicant tracking system is not an intellectual human entity. An applicant tracking system doesn't push you in or out. It's the recruiters on the other end who either have put in incorrect rules or don't know how to use it. So keep that in mind. Tools don't recruit, people do. Look, here are some things that easy things. Pick a job. So I'm going to put this back to my host. Pick a job that someone's applying for.
Let's use that software developer again. So it's a software developer with particular skills to work for, insurance.
I'll make it easy. Let's say you're looking for an insurance company doing a back-end developer with where the data exists in the cloud somewhere, and it's for, and you know the name of the company, I'm assuming, correct, Jeff?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, fine. Well, what the job seeker is going to do is I'm going to do simple things, do internet searches for that company and put in some of the keywords. Now, we're talking here is what recruiters do is we use these things called Boolean searches, which are essentially, logic statements that allow us to search the internet for things. As part of this, Jeff, I'll provide the audience with a couple of Boolean strings that they could use for themselves. But what I would do is I can search the internet for, presences of, maybe this insurance company has signed a new deal with Amazon Web Service or Azure services, depending on whether they are open source or, .NET SharePoint. I'm going to look for, I might put the company's, a template for the company's email and search software development forums by people who work at that company, little by little. And it really only takes about a half hour to see what the company is doing out there in terms of, back-end development, cloud development in the insurance industry. You can also just go look at conferences. One of the hidden things that recruiters do is I like looking at, conference proceedings and speakers to see, what topics companies are looking at. By the way, speakers at conferences are very good targets to recruit because I know what they're talking about. Typically at a conference, someone will talk about the issues that are prevalent in their company. So, there are research things you can do which don't take a long time. And then, you can put it in your cover, put it in your resume. If you've done that stuff, put that up in your summary. Screw the cover letter. I mean, all universities look at the resume first. And if you can put some of those key issues up in the summary right there, they're going to be seen. Jeff?
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. When all is said and done, if someone makes the fit obvious by providing customized information to demonstrate that fit, it goes so far toward getting you that interview and getting you a leg up on your competition once you're in the door.
Well, I'll take it even further. The beauty of LinkedIn is, if you know what the title of the job is, you can pretty much figure out who your boss is going to be just on LinkedIn alone. And then what you do is you go look at their profile, look at some of the things that they talk about. That often gives you some pretty good clues as to what the real job is. And there's nothing wrong, by the way, with if you have, done your research and you have a pretty good idea of who the hiring manager is, shoot, just connect to that person. Send them an email. We can show you there are tools to find out people's emails. By the way, for job seekers, if you are using LinkedIn, there is a really cool tool called Prophet, Prophet. And again, I'll include the link after the show, Jeff.
Send the links to me, and they'll be in the show notes.
Absolutely. But, Prophet will give you a good sense of what the actual email of that person is. So if you've done your research and found out that this person who's likely your hiring manager has done certain things and you've done those too, send them an email. It's not necessarily bypassing recruiting, but it's just augmenting your chances, if you will. I don't mind. By the way, I don't mind when people go directly to hiring managers, and hiring managers then come to me and go, Steve, this one's pretty good. I think we should talk to him. They just made my job easier. I can't be everywhere, so I like that.
And as a way of going around the applicant tracking system, you're going to the actual decision maker rather than through the filters. Again,
although Jeff, you made that mistake again. The applicant don't hate the software people. If the applicant tracking system, if the recruiter doesn't see your resume, again, there are two ways around it. It could be because your resume sucks, and frankly, it's just tasks. And a task is not an accomplishment. Just so you all know that. And the ATS is not a human being which is going to kick you out because it doesn't like your name. I really want to, emphasize that. If an applicant if you're not, quote, getting, I don't know why people say you're not getting through the applicant tracking system. It's the recruiter who you're not getting through. Please keep that in mind. And frankly, for a larger company, Jeff, you can get there can be thousands of resumes a day rather. It takes a while to get through them. I personally have been in a company where, when I started there were 6,000 unopened emails in the inbox, the careers inbox. It took me 2 months to get through to them. But I got back to people. And I don't mind, and good recruiters shouldn't mind when you remind them, hey, just want to let you know, this is the email. You don't need a cover letter. Just want to let you know I know a really good problem solver who has built back-end systems in the insurance industry. Wink, wink. You don't need a long, drawn-out cover letter to say that. I just said that in one line.
And it's part of being personal, because if people go, see, I differ from you on the notion of these systems. Now, again, I understand the reason that they exist, but as you said earlier, sometimes the rules that have been created look for specific languaging or sequences of language that cause an individual to be rejected who actually have experience doing exactly what they want. So rather than put yourself at risk with the ATS, I suggest the direct contact with the hiring manager, which is a lot of what you've been talking about. But at the end of the day, folks, the game plan is to try and make a personal connection with someone who will influence you getting in the door and influence you getting hired. And that cover letter so wonderfully illustrated, you can't do it by going, dear sir or madam, or, hey, I haven't heard from you yet, and having that whiny or
I mean, the worst thing are the serial appliers. I mean, I'm telling you, folks, if you apply for 10 different jobs at the same time, you're not going to get the chance of you getting any of them is slim to none.
Agreed.
That's something that people don't get. Or I'm just checking to see if I got your email. Well, didn't the ATS say that you got to ping you back and say, hey, thanks for your email, thanks for your resume? Didn't it do that? Yeah. So what makes you think otherwise? You're just a nudge. I mean, people like that. I understand really, Jeff, understand. The unemployment might say 5.5%, but believe me, it doesn't take into account people who've given up looking. So it's much higher. So I understand. I've been there. How important it is to just be recognized, but you are being recognized. The reason you're not being called is more likely that you don't have the specific experience that I'm looking for. Jeff?
Or they haven't had time to get to your resume yet. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. In one way or another, your resume is number 850 of the ones that they actually think might be qualified, and they just haven't gotten to it yet.
Not pretty much. Look, I'll give you an example. Doing a marketing manager in Brazil, in Latin America, I was going through nearly 300 folks. It took me 6 weeks to do it the right way. I mean, I let all the folks know I got it, but to finally work through them, it took me 6 weeks with all the other things I was working on. So things do take time.
Yes, they do. And Steve, speaking of time, we're starting to come up against our time with the end of our time with one another. Is there any other point that you want to communicate with everyone about what we know that they need to hear?
Oh, my goodness. We will hear, oh, God. There are many nice people who are clearly experienced who we will sometimes say no to a person because they are actually too advanced for the environment. I will be straight with people. I will say, look, this is not the place for you, and this is why. The more recruiters talk about fit. I wish fit could be many different things. Scarily, recruiters at the end of the day, not as many are experienced like me who can go up against hiring managers and make a case for hiring somebody. But I know some recruiters who've been bullied into turning people down. They didn't come from the right school. They have the wrong name. Wink. We know what that means. They have the wrong gender. We know what that means. It's sad. It's pathetic. It's illegal that some of these things are taking place. But I know organizations where this, in fact, has taken place. And
I've learned clients from doing that nonsense with me.
Yeah, and as far as I'm concerned, if you're getting repeated no's from a company, it's no. I mean, don't go for the 3 strikes. Honestly, 2 strikes, move on to another company. There's ageism rampant in recruiting. I don't think they'll be a fit. Why? It's because they have gray hair in their beard? Yes. No, I didn't say that, but yes. It's the stuff that takes place is just frightening. There is one thing I'd like folks to know, and again, I'm going to send you the link to it. I think you know Jerry Crispin and Mark Mailer. Jeff?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Yeah. They have a consulting firm called Career Crossroads, and again, the link will be there. And they put out an annual sources of hire report. So it contradicts many of the stuff that these social companies are providing in terms of sources of hire. But I think look at it, and I'll give you the link. I'll tell folks what page to look at. But it's important to understand where there's definitely an impact of social media. But the bulk of hires is still taking place via internal career referrals, internal employee referrals. So my advice is don't wait until you need a job to start connecting to people in companies. Always have a top 10 list of wish companies, and make sure you create relationships with people in there. On social media, LinkedIn in of itself, the sheer connection is not social. I mean, that's just like sending up an email. When people at target companies post updates or post articles, comment on them little by little. Same thing on Twitter. Twitter is not an intuitive job search tool, but it's a good place to build relationships. Same thing with company pages on Facebook. These are all part of things that you can do, the job seeker should do literally 2 to 3 times a month, spend time, cultivating and stewarding your network. Go to the professional meetings where these people go. Shake their hands. Invite them to coffee when you don't need it. But all in all, I mean, the important thing to be specific. Be a problem solver. And don't talk to me about your tasks. Find out what problems keep hiring managers awake at night. If you focus on those in your resume and your resume summary, you will get seen. You won't get hired necessarily, but you will get seen. Jeff?
Beautifully done, Steve. Thank you so much for making time today for everyone. How can people reach you or find out more about what you do?
Well, a couple of things. I blog several places, primarily at a blog called recruitinginferno.com. I also blog at a place called recruitingblogs.com. My Twitter handle is Levy Recruits. That's one word, LevyRecruits. And my LinkedIn profile is linkedin.com/in/Stephen M. Levy. That's STEVENMLEVY. And I will respond to everyone and anyone who has a job search question. And finally, Jeffy, is on Fridays at noon to 1 Eastern Time, I am part of a three-person panel that puts on something called the Open Mic Career Chat. That's #OMC Chat, which is it's as we say, the truthiest job search blog on the internet, where we talk about stuff without filters. Jeff,
I was there last Friday, and folks, it is blunt. It is really cool. So, folks, I'll be back next time with someone else to help you, to talk with you about how you can improve your job search attitude and skills. So this is Jeff Altman. Hope you enjoyed today's show. Hope you have a great day.
For more job search advice, visit Jeff's website at thebiggamehunter.us. That's thebiggamehunter.us.